Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. My name is Tony. Thank you for joining us here on Saturday morning, 11 o'clock Pacific time, and whatever local time it is for you. Jumping right into it, let's talk about what is going to be discussed today. Boom! We're going to talk about that new series. What about Star Trek New Worlds? First impressions, no spoilers. Just wanted to share my thoughts on that and hear from you. Also, what if that was a Klingon series, not a Federation one, instead of exploring strange new worlds, rather conquering strange new worlds. And in that spirit, we're going to talk about how to expand your empire the Klingon way in today's episode. Also, we're going to talk about, in the spirit of that, the Battle of V. V for Victory was the title of the battle, how that happened, how it went down, what the casualties were, and what the results were. And, of course, we're going to go through the turn reveal, turn 59. Whoa, we're getting up to 60. There are some big and interesting strategic shifts that have just occurred. Very interesting to share. So let's get into the chat real quick and talk about, or welcome everybody, our usual cast of characters, crazy folks that they are. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Eugene. Bill is in the house. We've also got Paul and Lord Lawless. It begins. Yes, yes, yes. All right, so... very interesting. Let's talk about Star Trek New Worlds. Very interesting new series that just released. Now, I just want to give you a quick background on where I come from when it comes to the Star Trek world or universe or appreciation. I grew up on classic Shatner Trek, TOS, or the original series. Not so much the animated series, never really watched that, but very much a big fan of the Shatnerian pause and the overacting of that series. Certainly appreciate and love TNG and all the sort of series that came after that. Love Lower Decks. Haven't really watched Prodigy. Didn't as much appreciate Discovery, and just finished watching Picard and have sort of mixed feelings about that. At the end of the day, I've got a real sort of soft spot in my heart for that classic Trek aesthetic. And a great way to describe that is if you look at the Prelude to Axanar and all the Axanar work that happened, if you haven't already seen that, then please go Google search Prelude to Axanar and you'll see what I mean. But the Axanar series of videos really sort of tap into that old TOS aesthetic and the sort of the spirit of Star Trek. I found that in some of the series that have been sort of released recently, including Picard and including Discovery, there was a shift away from what it was, that sort of magic special ingredient that made Trek. That itch wasn't getting scratched. And I've got to say, I just watched the first episode of Strange New Worlds, and boy, did it hit the nail on the head for me. Now, I mean, you could be critical about some of the aesthetic choices and things like that, but at its core, at its heart, and the sort of the spirit and intent and sort of the tone of the show, it really resonates really strongly with me, with my sort of old school Trek fandom. It really taps into that in a solid way. The aesthetic, if you're thinking about it, is very much sort of a combination of the Star Trek reboot with Chris Pine and that movie series, and that kind of aesthetic that came from there, and a mix of sort of we'll call it TOS elements. But there's very much that sort of new, that fresh, that open, that bright aesthetic that I thought was very interesting. One of the key ingredients, I think, about TOS as a series versus some of the other series, and why Star Trek New Worlds is so good, at least in watching the first episode, is the tapestry of colorful characters. In the first episode, you get introduced to a number of folks, and again, no spoilers here, but you get introduced to a lot of core characters, and there's flavor to them. There's depth to them. There's nuance to them. There's something to sort of bite your teeth into, which I really enjoyed. So you've got a little bit of a tie-in to, because the Pike Trek Strange New World series came from Discovery, so there's a little homage to that, or touch in on that storyline. But generally speaking, the overall arc of the episode and the tone and the interaction, everything, it's really touches classic Trek. And granted, it's been sort of refreshed and modernized and so on. And, I get that. But if this is the direction that Trek is going to go, I am a huge, huge supporter. Like I say, it scratches that itch, it hits the right tone, and the visuals around it really resonate with what I think of as classic Trek. They've got the use of the classic communicator, but in a new way. They've got uniforms that are very, very much reminiscent of TOS, but refreshed and modernized. The characters involved are all characters that you will have some familiarity with, but not in-depth knowledge of necessarily. And there's development of those characters that is above and beyond what you've ever seen before. And the fact that this is Christopher Pike as the captain of the Enterprise versus Kirk is a very interesting. I really like Anson Mount's performance of Pike. I think his interpretation of that character is spot on, or at least I really like the delivery of it, and also his overall acting I find is very, very good. I've seen him, of course, Hell on Wheels and in Discovery, and then a couple of the little things, but he is. I think his performance is very good and touches the right tones again, sort of really. Again, scratching that itch and providing a lot of previous episodes have fallen into the flaw or the pitfall of sort of comparing themselves to the classic TOS model with Kirk and Spock and so on. This one, it's very much its own thing. It's the delivery of that particular character and how it interacts with everyone around him. Singular, I think, in its delivery. And just really touches all those right tones, which I really, really appreciate. So with that said, what were your thoughts on Star Trek New Worlds? If you've seen it, if you haven't, if you can, get to it, because it's a great series, great first episode, and really looking forward to seeing what's coming. We've seen some of the sort of the trailers and the teasers, as with some visual elements of what's coming down the pike, if you'll excuse the pun. When it comes to the further episodes in the season, as well as, and very interested to see. I don't know if any of you have seen the various videos. For example, Trek Culture did one where they talked about Captain Kirk appearing in Strange New Worlds. We haven't seen him yet, and there's no there's a mention of Kirk in the first episode, which is fun, but it'll be very interesting to see how and if Captain Kirk appears in that episode or in that series, and what happens from there. So anyways, what did you think of it? Can you watch it wherever you are in the world? And are you looking forward to the rest of the episodes as they come out throughout this series? Would love to hear your opinions. Very, very excited. But let me ask, what would happen if it were a Klingon series? Instead of going out and exploring strange new worlds and discovering things when it comes to meeting new civilizations and being friendly and nice and so on, what would happen if it was the Klingon Empire stomping, conquering, submitting all these civilizations as they burned the galaxy raw and conquering all their various territories? Well, if that is your flavor, then let me share with you that the Klingon Empire is currently doing that in our games to a certain degree. And I will share with you the battle results of the battle. V for Victory is what I titled the battle, but the battle over V, which was the Paravian planet in Klingon space. But before I dive into that, I notice the chat has gone quiet. Oh, there we go. Burniating the galaxy, Daniel says. Well. Yes, burniating the galaxy. Burning it down and taking no prisoners. Speaking of taking no prisoners, let's go straight to the turn reveal. We're going to touch into a couple of the key factions and some interesting developments that have occurred on the map in our Star Trek New Worlds campaign. And I apologize. If you're brand new to this channel and you have no idea what we are or what's going on here, Star Trek New Worlds is a 4X a 4X war game that we play here online with you on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. We share it to you over the airwaves, but we play it using the rule set of Federation Empire as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau. And the map you will see in here in just a moment is presented to you through Vassal, which is a free-to-use platform to be able to virtually tabletop games and have fun doing it. So if that is something that interests you and you like things Trek and you like things wargamey or strategy based, then please feel free to be like Caleb Wynn, our newest subscriber. Thank you so much, Caleb, for joining our community. If you are watching right now, thank you. And if you are not Caleb and you're watching and you're saying, oh, what is this? Consider hitting that button with the alerts so that you can catch us every Saturday at 11 o'clock when we live stream, or at least 11 o'clock Pacific time. Speaking of which, I'm a little parched, so I'm going to take a quick sip of my coffee. If coffee is something that you enjoy and you think, hey, I think I want to send a little good karma the way of New Worlds, then please, that little link down in the corner there allows you to be able to send and buy us a virtual coffee and keep this whistle wet and the caffeine coursing through my veins, stimulating and keeping us online, invigorated and exciting, hopefully, for you. So let me take a quick sip. And without further ado, let's get to the map. Now, past couple of live streams, we've sort of gone in different directions, but because of where the action is happening today, let's start with Big Red. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin with the Romulans. That's the red on the map that you see right now. And let's start with the big baddie that everybody's wondering about. It's the Juggernauts. As a reminder, who are the Juggernauts? They are this mysterious faction that theoretically, or we believe, might be in the center of the map. And they have fleets of ships that are at the highest level of technology that you can attain in this game. As a reminder, W, Y, M, and GW are the 4 eras or milestone technology stages that happen throughout this game. We are all currently around the Y era, and the Juggernauts seem to be GW. So out of the 4 stages, we're at stage 2, they're at stage 4, and boy, do we feel it when we encounter these folks. So let's take a quick look at the minor fleet, Juggernaut, home fleet. Here we are. So this fleet right here are these ships. The CA, which is a 12 attack, 12 defense ship with that little plus sign, meaning it is a mauler, allowing it to do directed damage at a 1-to-1. Excuse me. You've got the light cruiser, which is a straight 8 attack, 8 defense. 2 destroyers, which are 6/6s, and 3 frigates at 5/5s. If you combine them together, you get the 15. So you can see here, not a small fleet. Now, the Romulans have seen these guys pop up through their artificial wormhole, which they've created here, popped through and appeared in Romulan space. Now, because they're such a pain in the butt, the Romulans have deployed their Hammer fleet or Cerberus fleet, which, when we look at, oh my God, it's so ironic that it appeared right on top of the Juggernaut fleet. But let's take a quick look here. Now, just numbers to numbers, you can see that that Cerberus fleet is going to potentially destroy, stomp, annihilate the Juggernauts. However, let's just take a quick look here. We've got a total of 11 frigates, which are these KE2s. You've got 9 destroyers, which are the KF4s. You've got 8 cruisers, which are the KD4s. And then you've got 2 interesting ships here. One is the KD4C, which is the command cruiser. No difference in attack and defense to the normal cruiser, the KD4. But we've got the KC4, which is a dreadnought. Now, why is that different? Well, as we go up these ships, they have different command ratings. They can control more ships in a fight, or put it another way, you can put more units, more counters on your battle board when you're fighting in combat. So with this dreadnought in-house, they can do a total of 10 ships above and beyond the dreadnought. So that brings a total of 11 ships to a battle line or any particular round of combat. If you are looking to find out more about combat, then please go check out our combat tutorial in the playlist for Star Trek New Worlds. Yeah, the Dreadnought is certainly the command ship in this fleet. What's interesting about that is when we look at the Juggernauts, they don't need something like a Dreadnought. The CA has probably got a 8 command rating. That is, generally speaking, what cruisers have. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 ships total. It doesn't even get close to the command rating, really. So the amount of ships that it's bringing to the fight is certainly more than enough. However, I think there's no question that Cerberus fleet will destroy and annihilate the Juggernaut fleet based on volume alone. The amount of damage that they can soak up with all the cruisers and destroyers and frigates that they have, they will, I believe, undoubtedly win this fight. We've seen the Gorn have a fight or have combat with a similar size fleet, and if the Gorn could come out on top, knowing that their ships are not as effective or sort of as potent as the Remans are, I think it's, especially with the number of ships here, they've got more ships and their ships are better. I think it's without a doubt going to happen that, that the Remans are going to crush, kill, and destroy the Juggernauts. But interesting to note that the Juggernauts haven't really moved in a direction that's causing anybody any issues. They've gone essentially straight south. That's good because it hasn't really introduced any problems when it comes to Reman operations. The only thing is, of course, moving Cerberus fleet to be able to engage this home fleet. Now, the home fleet is usually moving only 1 hex at a time. So anywhere that it moves into this 1 hex radius of where it's currently located, Cerberus fleet will be able to engage it. Even if it goes into these fog of war hexes, the Cerberus fleet will be able to move into and engage those hexes. However, here's a question for the Reman player. If home fleet, the Juggernaut faction, goes into a fog of war hex, why engage them? What is the value or the benefit of attacking the Juggernaut faction? We know that if you attack them, obviously, well, based on what we can see here, there's a really good chance you win. I'm pretty sure you'll win. That said, you'll probably suffer casualties. You'll lose ships or ships will be damaged. Is it worth it to attack them? Yes, you'll destroy them, you'll eliminate the potential threat, but if they move into a fog of war hex, it is much more likely that they will continue moving away from you, at least a 50-50 chance. Now, the thing to mention is that in this game, when you encounter the Juggernauts and attack them and successfully defeat them the first time, you'll get a tech boost. You'll get a number of and a degree of advancement in certain technologies depending on what the roles are, but you'll go in, you'll beat them up, and if you win successful or you're successful in the combat, then you'll get a tech boost from it. So that's a benefit. But is it worth the cost of ships? Now, granted, let's face it, the Remans have ships to spare. However, what if you let that Juggernaut faction just kind of float off into the fog of war hexes? Two things. If they float off into the fog of war hexes and they go past and beyond your ability to detect them, one, you'll lose track of them, and only the GM will be able to see them on the map. He'll be able to record secretly where they are, but because the map is the way the map is, like we can all see other units because we all have intel and visibility on each other's units. But the Juggernauts are not connected to, as an empire, are not connected to any of us, and when their units go off map and no other faction has them within sensor range, then we won't be able to follow them. They could effectively disappear into the fog of war hexes, and while we know that the Remans are well equipped to be able to deal with them, they could move in such a way, that they could randomly appear perhaps to become a Lyran problem or over time, maybe an ISC problem or Federation or anybody else. So I asked the question, what's the benefit of attacking them? Yes, you'll get a tech boost. Good. You'll definitely sever casualties. Maybe you'll actually lose some ships. I mean, after all, there is a mauler there, and it will target and destroy probably your cruisers. Depending on how many battle rounds there are, I'm going to guess you're going to lose at least 1 or 2 cruisers. Just from the mauler alone. And the benefit of allowing them to disappear into the fog of war is that you won't have to deal with them, and they become somebody else's problem. They become an ambiguous threat that anybody might have to deal with, and something that might be an extra little itch in the back of the head of your opponents, your neighbors, if they're trying to deal with their own problems. What would happen if that fleet were to, over the course of 10 turns, let's say, make their way 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and pop up over here after the Lyrans have explored this territory and become a Lyran problem? What if they went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and started working their way towards Hydron space? Or went straight across and went and attacked the Federation? I'm just saying there are options here. You don't have to take them out. Don't get me wrong, there's always fun in killing things, and I know the Reman's got an itchy trigger finger, so let's have at it. Let's see how it goes. But from a strategic level, maybe there's an opportunity here to let them become somebody else's problem. We'll have to see as this evolves. So, very exciting. So beyond the juggernauts in this faction, let me take a moment, take a step back, and go through EP and fleet cap, because I haven't done that yet. So let's take a look at EP and go up and down the list to see who's who in the zoo when it comes to income. The Carnivons are at 42.5. That is, again, the income they had last time. So one of the most powerful economies in the game. The Federation at 37. The Gorn 38.5, above and beyond their bottom of the barrel positioning of early game. The Hydrons are at 40.5. Looks like they are creeping forward bit by bit. The ISC are at 38, but we know, and I'll just take a quick scan over, we know that there's an ISC faction over here in Tholian space. Looks like they're still in full effect and stereo sound. So that is actually a 35 when it comes to the player. So that's an interesting kind of caveat to take note of. Where are we here? The ISC 38. The Klingons are at an even 44 after their conquering of V for victory. The Lyrans are at 37.5. The Remans are at also 37.5. The Romulans are at 37.5, and the Tholians have cracked 40. They are now at 41. Ooh, they're getting a little too close for comfort for me. So yes, the Tholians are at 41. There are 4 factions above 40. The Klingons at 44, the Carnivon at 42.5, the Tholians at 41, and the Hydrons at 40.5. So 4 factions above 40. Very interesting to see. Almost half the players in the game, at least a third. So very interesting to see how that's evolving and how the different factions are playing. The lowest economy in the game, interesting to note, is the Federation at 37, but between 37 and 37.5, of which the Remans, the Romulans, and the Lyrans are all at that level, it's very interesting to see. There's quite a polarization happening at this point. 37.5 is ballpark where a lot of other factions are, and we'll call the average 42 between the other factions. So between 37.5 and 42, there's about something close to a 4 to 5 EP difference between the sort of the top tier economies and the bottom tier economies. When you factor that in with peacetime, it's really not that much of a difference because, again, your economies get cut in half during peacetime. You only get 50% net of the gross that you collect. So very interesting to see how this is evolving. Let's take a look at fleet cap and see how everybody's fleets are growing. All right. So fleet cap, let's park it right here, and I'll just make it a little bit bigger. There we go. All right. Ooh, the Carnivons are they're building out their fleets quite significantly. They're at 62 ship equivalents with a 148 273 split, getting close to the 150 marker. That is a real the 150 is a real distinguishing mark when they kind of escalate to the next level. Federation is at 41 ship equivalents with a 108 178. Good to see them finally cracking 100. The Gorn are at 36 with 70 139. Now we know that they've added quite a few ships based in response to how they had to deal with the Juggernauts, and good to see them creeping towards the 100 attack factor mark. The Hydrons, 72 ship equivalents. Wow. At 159 270 split. So they're now above the 150 mark, and very interesting to see as they continue to pump out more and more and more ships. But look at this delta. Look at this difference between the Hydrons. My nose is incredibly itchy. I apologize. The Hydrons are at 72 ship equivalents with basically 160 attack. The ISC are at 66 ship equivalents with 193. Now, we know that there is a faction. Let me just see if I can pull this up. There is a fleet over here. What's the name of this fleet here? Third Reserve. So Third Reserve, if we look here somewhere, it will show us. I'm looking for there we go, Third Reserve. So Third Reserve has a 17 attack, 27 defense, 6 ship equivalents. So if we take that away, that's 60 ships to 72, 12 ship difference. And if you take 17 away from their attack factors, then that takes them down to 166. Still, more attack factors, more defense factors, and a 12 ship difference. Very interesting. And again, the ISC are continuing to build more ships, so we'll see how that sort of progresses forward. The Klingons now have 54 ship equivalents with a 135 212 split. Very interesting to watch the Klingon fleet composition relative to their neighbors, the Romulans and the Carnivons. Carnivons at 62 to Klingon 54. So there's quite a spread happening there. And if you look at the difference between attack and defense factors, quite a difference. So interesting to see how that's evolving, and we'll see how that kind of progresses going forward. So the Klingons have 54 ships. The Lyrans are at 48 ship equivalents, cracking 100 with 111 attack factors and 225 defense. The Remans, not to be outdone by the Hydrons, they are now at 80. Wow. 80 ships, 228. Man, 228 attack factors, 302 defense. Quite a step above everybody else. Even with the Hydrons at 72 ship equivalents, they have essentially a 50% advantage in the total attack factors than the Hydrons. Crazy. Okay, looking at the Romulans, they have 42 ship equivalents with a 110 181 split. Very interesting to see that. So fewer ships than the Klingons by about 12, but they're really getting close to the attack and defense factor split. So very interesting to see that. The Tholians are at 45 ship equivalents. They're growing as well, but still 53 attack factor to 164. Not a big delta there when it comes to their attack. Like they're without a doubt the weakest faction in the game. So interesting. So they have more ships than the Gorn, lower attack factors. Just very interesting to see how this is all sort of evolving when it comes to the composition of ships. So very, very interesting to see. Let me get back to where all the exciting stuff is happening. So why did I start off with Big Red? Not only did we want to find out about the Juggernauts, but let's talk about what's happening in ISC space and along the border. So first of all, let's go top down. One particular interesting thing. This little guy here, quite the game changer. So this is a wormhole, two-way wormhole, that has popped out right next to the homeworld for the ISC. the innie, or the sort of the other end of that wormhole, is only 3 hexes away from the Klingon home, or sorry, the Reman homeworld. So, assuming that there is research and tech and development going on into wormhole tech, the Remans will be able to strategically move assets over a pretty significant distance and introduce them quickly and effectively into ISC space. Now, whether that's to attack the ISC or support the ISC is up to them. However, let's assume that they're supporting the ISC. This puts them within very legit spitting distance of being able to build a base on this side of the wormhole. And 1, 2, 3, 4. They could build another base, and they would have reach into Hydron space. Now, from a metagaming perspective, player-to-player kind of thing, we know that the player of the Remans has a pre-existing relationship with the Hydron player where they enjoy going after each other and taking each other out in games like this. So, this would just be a way for them to do that. Facilitating more attack, more destruction, more chaos. And considering the length of time that the ISC and the Hydrons have already been at war, I don't see this being a good sort of outcome for the Hydrons, because whereas the Hydrons are trying to bring the Carnivons in on side to be able to help them in their fight against the ISC, the Remans are looking for an opportunity to drop their hammer on a target, and this wormhole allows them more flexibility to be able to do that exact same thing on the Hydrons. Now, they're not at the point yet, obviously, with the technology of wormhole travel to be able to do that, but depending on how much time and energy they put into it, we'll see how that develops. You can see that they've crippled going through, so they haven't accomplished that just yet, but, well, it's, yeah, stuff's happening. It's going to be interesting. What this looks like in 10 or 20 turns will be very, very interesting, especially with the results of the ISC Hydron War. Yeah. Speaking of which, let's scroll down a little bit and take a look at what's going on in and around the border. So I don't know, and I don't have a lot of visibility on all the different battles that may have occurred along this border. However, as you can see, there's quite a bit going on. Let's take away the ships for a second. So we can see that there is a Orion base that's been discovered here. This was previously a Fog of War hex. So a ship moved into this hex and discovered it, and now there's an Orion base there. Why is that a pain in the butt? For the Hydrons, if they're looking to press their advantage, it is inconvenient because the Orion base interrupts their supply. You can't send supply through this hex unless they've got some kind of weird arrangement with the Orions, which, as we know, the Hydrons have something special going on with the Orion. So we'll have to see how that works out. Either way, that is an interesting development. And then, as you can see as well, they've opened up this second front. I mentioned it several live streams ago that one of the possible ways that they could really leverage their advantage would be to open up new vectors of attack or new angles of attack, new fronts. And that's effectively what's happened here. They've opened up another avenue to be able to move in and sort of attack the ISC. But let's take a look at what's actually there. So we have a Vol, a frigate that's taken this resource here. Interesting to see that the way this worked out, that the ISC player didn't react to take it out. However, you can see there's quite a few fleets around here. So let's take a look at a couple of them just to see what's going on. So there's Iron Fleet from the Hydron perspective. Metal fleets. Let's put that over my head. So Iron Fleet. We've got New Fleet, Hydron New Fleet. Okay. All right, we'll put that, I guess, here as well. What else we got? Let's just do this column here, and then we'll... Oh, my goodness. So many fleets. Jim, you're killing me. Ah, dear. Okay. Home, Royal, and Expeditionary. So, Home. There we go. We'll put that over in this top corner here. Royal and Expeditionary. Yeah. So, Royal. I guess it'll be in the noble fleets. Put that here. And Home, Royal, and Expeditionary. Hydron, Expeditionary Fleet. So much stuff here, Jim. You're killing me. All right. So we'll put that there. And all we're doing is we're looking at what's sort of in this column here. So Iron Fleet, as we can see, is this little collection of ships here. We've got a YCC with 3 vols. Okay, no big deal. New Fleet, which is in reaction distance to Iron Fleet, as in if the ISC were to attack it, that would be one of the potential fleets that could respond. So New Fleet is, where is New Fleet? New Fleet, that's Home Fleet. Oh, sorry, so New Fleet is a Dreadnought and 1 vol. Okay, nothing too crazy. And then, of course, we've got, what was it? Expeditionary on this First Fleet there as well. Good gracious. So First Fleet, Neon Fleet. We need to consolidate, especially when you've only got 1 ship in a fleet box. We need to consolidate these fleet boxes for convenience. So based on the pain in the butt that is, I'm just going to go over what we got here. So we got a cruiser. Expeditionary Fleet has a YCC and 3 vols. What else we got? We got Royal Fleet that's there. So a DN with a prime team, another command cruiser with a prime team and 3 vols. And Home Fleet. Home Fleet is in this hex as well. Another DN, CC, 9 vols, 10 vols. So what do we have here? We have a collection of double-digit vols, which look frigates, that is. So that looks to be somewhere around, and I'm just ballparking here because I'm not doing the math very well in my head on the fly with all the different fleet boxes. Jim, goodness gracious. So I'm ballparking it at around 15, 16 frigates. You got 2 or 3 DNs in the vicinity, and then a bunch of YCCs. So that's not an insignificant force. That's pretty significant. Let's just take a quick look at Zinc and Cobalt. So Cobalt Fleet is a exploration ship with a escort, and Zinc here is Zinc there. Zinc is a YCC with 2 vols. So nothing too crazy here, except there's an exploration ship and a tug with basically a cruiser and a couple of frigate escort. So that's good. So we've established that we've got a couple of command ships, a couple of DNs, and a bunch of frigates. So this is good. This is good from the Hydron perspective. Now, get rid of all those fleet boxes. Let's pull up the ISC fleets. So much easier to deal with. All right. So what do we got? We got, what do we got? Justice and Order Fleet. So Justice is just a YCL, and Order Fleet is a CC, a CA, 4 CLs, commando ship, and 4 DDs. So nothing too crazy at this YDK, but I mean it's not nothing. What's this? Integrity Fleet, I'm assuming. Integrity is a CA, a CL, and 4 DDs. Integrity and Providence, maybe? Providence. DN, CA, CL, a bunch of cripples, which, considering where it is, they'll be able to repair all of them this turn, and then some DDs. Okay. And then there's Enforcement Fleet, whereas enforcement is not insignificant. 6 CLs. How many DDs? It looks like 6 as well. So 6 DDs, 6 CLs, and a YCL. Okay. So what do we got here? Long story short, we have a good number of ships and fleets when it comes to what the ISC have on their side of the fence. Again, bigger, better ships. How they're going to actually deploy these ships to do what they want to do is going to be interesting. A couple of things that I would point out, and I see lots of chat. I'll be jumping in there in a sec. So this tug scenario with a WTG and a YTG, these tugs are an issue. There's 2 tugs, meaning one can build a base and the other one can provide supply. And if I'm the ISC player, I want to deal with these guys effectively and efficiently. Now, you don't need a lot of ships to do that. However, there's a lot of garbage in the way from the Hydran perspective. Like they just put a lot of crap in the way. So based on the ships that are here, within 4 hex range, so 1, 2, 3, 4, they can reach as far as New Fleet and hit everyone here. These guys can, of course, hit Zinc and Cobalt. If I'm the ISC player, I actually really appreciate that. I really appreciate that the that the Hydrans have opened that up, where Zinc and Cobalt are. Why? Because now it gives this little base the opportunity to launch attacks to not only take out this crap, but position ships in a spot where they could, let's say, for example, they went into Tango 22 here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I were an IC player and I was able to blow up this base in, what is this? Is that Whiskey? Whiskey 25. Whiskey 25. I would cause all sorts of issues. Now, granted, you have to take this base out as well in Victor 24, but there's 2 bases here that if you blow up are going to cause supply issues for the Hydrans. And because as the ISC you have initiative, assuming you can get away with this, if you put enough ships on station and you're able to move that stuff forward in an appropriate way, I think you're going to successfully cause all sorts of issues, especially if you have enough ships to be able to harass and keep all these guys focused on this little funnel right here. A couple little things or advantages that I would point out for the ISC as well. Because they have a YDK here and a YDK there, you can forward build frigates in at the YDK. They can build a Y-air frigate, 1 each. So if you build a frigate here and a frigate here, then you can automatically, from operational movement perspective, move them and attack different targets with the Hydrans. So that's good. I don't know how that's going to match with your slipways and what you're producing, but if you have frigate slipways, you can build frigates, forward deploy them or forward build them at those YDKs. So that's advantageous. Just more ships on station to be able to pin or take out enemy fleets. One thing to think about, based on what I'm seeing here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Is there a base there yet? 1, 2, 3, 4. There is a possibility, depending on the Orions, that this vol may be out of supply. If the Orions are exercising, and this is only when they do, depending on what's happening with the Orions and your relationship with them, if this Orion is not allowing supply through and affecting supply around them, then this vol is out of supply, meaning it's an easy target. It's an easy kill, and you'll take very little, if no damage, effectively by killing it, assuming you bring enough ships on station. Or you could just send 1 frigate and you'll probably get it on the way out. So keeping in mind that if it is out of supply, it moves half speed and it only has half the attack factors, i.e. 1 attack factor. So as long as you bring enough ships, you can pop it. But is it a valuable target? Maybe not so much. The more valuable targets really are the tugs and this Cobalt Fleet, which has the exploration ship in it. So if you can pop those, you're going to be causing economic pain to the Hydrans. But don't get tunnel vision. Focus on the things that are important, i.e. the fact that there's a tug here and there's 2 tugs here, and there's a lot of business going on here. Is there? There's another YCC there. So there's a lot of mess there. I don't know how much of that is fleet management from Jim or intentional in the sense of creating so much fuss, so much flack, so much noise that you can't see the signal through it. And he's distracting you with the static of all these fleet boxes and everything. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to sort that out. ironically, even though it's better to manage, it's also easier to sort of observe and figure out how to attack and respond to what's going on with the IC, because they're so much more efficient in their fleet boxes. So very interesting to sort this out. One other sort of point or thing to think about is from the IC's perspective, the YDKs, huge advantage. So I don't know what your economic situation is when it comes to building out these YBSs and turning them into YDKs, but the more YDKs you have here, the more you can forward build those frigates, not destroyers, just frigates, because they're a 2-point ship. And you can, obviously, they're harder targets, and they become harder for the hydrants to sort of break past you. So very, very interesting. So that is the ISC with the new wormhole from the Romulans, what's going on in and around the border, and so let's just scroll down and finish off Hydrant Space before we go to chat, because there's so much going on with the chat right now. Okay, so we can see here in Third Fleet, oh my god, Third, Nickel, and Iridium. Oh dear. Okay, let's just pull up Third Fleet, which is a single vol. You're killing me with this. Nickel and Iridium. All right. Shiny for nickel? No. Just metal fleets, I guess. Nickel, and Iridium. Okay, so you've got three fleet boxes for 3 vols and an exploration cruiser. You're killing me. You're killing me. So anyways, you're exploring. Got it. You're trying to open up that, and we'll see what happens, because it's very vulnerable back here, without a doubt. So that will create problems, and there's a tug there ready to move in and do damage. So very, very interesting. Not to mention all the other stuff that's here. And the Hydran Second Fleet. Let's see. Hydran Second Fleet? Yeah. YCC and a vol. They were in the area, I believe, to initially deal with the bug, which is why I came down here to look. So the... excuse me, I got to take a quick sip of water. All right, the bug is the space lens. That is the monster that the Hydrans are dealing with. And it is a hard enough monster that it will cause significant issues for any fleet that goes to deal with it. Like we mentioned before, it has a capability to hit all targets in the battle group at once with the damage that it does. So the Hydrans, when they do attack it, they need to bring a significant amount of firepower in that initial sort of round, and then sort of cause effect. So it'll be interesting to see how this bug kind of changes things as it goes forward, because it's now moving. I mean, it moves 1 hex at a time, but it's slowly moving its way east, and at this point south. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I mean, it can go anywhere. I don't know what the motivating factors from the DM or the GM, what is driving its movement. If it's completely random or if there's something else going on there, I don't know. But it's very interesting to see that it's sort of moving the way that it's moving. Before jumping into the Carnivon, turn, I will note a couple of interesting things. There is what looks like a captured YLR, which is an Orion ship, and a number of Carnivon ships that are moving in this direction. Interesting. Oh, okay, that'll be the Carnivon turn, and I will jump into that in a moment. But before I do, let's jump back into the chat. So there's so much chat now going on. Let's just take a quick look. I'm going to scroll up and start. Let's see. Okay, I got Ray Dawson. Sorry I'm late. Hey, Ray, welcome to the show. Daniel Easton, ISC actually lowest economy. There's a stray ISC planet in Thulian space. Right, of course. Yep. I'm the lowest, Paul says, 34.5. Bill Smith, killing a Juggernaut gives 1d6 tech boost to every research section. Well, in which case, send me some Juggernauts. I say that and watch bad things happen. Careful what you ask for, Tony. Okay. A big slow target. D6 all tech or D6 all tech boost. Was that just the sound of every weapon system in the galaxy going onto the Juggernaut fleets? What's a tech level cost? So 1 EP per tech, basically. And we're constantly investing in that as we go forward. So that's good. I'm just noticing now on the live stream, we've got double digits again, 10 concurrent viewers. So thank you, everybody, for joining us live. 5 likes, 10 concurrent viewers. If you are watching right now, whether on the replay or otherwise, please take a second, hit the thumbs up while I'm going over the chat, because it tickles the algorithm in just the right way. And, of course, we want to be able to spread this word to everybody we can, so that they can join us in the fun that we're having when it comes to F&E, Star Trek, and all things sci-fi. All right, Jim says, no worries, Tony. You know you love my fleet boxes. Yeah, I do, Jim. Yeah, I love the headache they give me. 1 EP in a tech moves tech 1 season closer, so 2 seasons in a year. 2 turns in a year, so a fall and a spring is what we call it. So it moves basically half a year forward. 1 category that pertains to MTech got 1d6, so on with all the techs for all the techs in MTech. Jim's mentioning XX20 has a YPG deployed on it. XX20. I don't see. I mean, maybe it's a counter that's not there, but if you're telling me there should be a YPG there, obviously I don't see it. He has 3 supply range. He smiles. Jim says, no fear of this sort of attack for me yet. Jim, IC frigates are crap, by the way. 2-3 uncrippled, but just 1 attack and 1 defense once crippled. Really bad. Vol eats ISC frigates. Fair enough. Oh my goodness. So looks like we found another kitty, Bill says. Woohoo! This is good. Bill had lost some of his cats recently, so he found another kitty. Great news, Bill. Gotta love 1-ship fleets. Hey, welcome aboard, Caleb Wynn. Mr. GM hasn't put it on the map, he says. Okay, so as things are going on in the top corner of the map, the northeast, we've got the Remans, the ISC, and the Hydrants going at it and having fun. What are we seeing there? So obviously the Remans are looking for an itchy trigger finger. They're looking for someone to attack. And based on what we just saw here, it looks as though there is a real advantage to be able to go and stomp that Juggernaut fleet. Of course, good times, and it'll be interesting to see how or what the Remans decide to do. Our space vampires in-house, will they go and stomp the Juggernauts? I mean, why not? If they're going to get a significant tech boost, and if they don't, how is that going to become an issue for other folks? We shall see. When it comes to the ISC and what they're doing, I would say that there's very much a back and forth that's occurring on the border between the Hydrants and the IC. It's a war for war's sake. And granted, the Hydrants are making gains. They keep creeping forward, and they keep taking resources from the IC. Now, at some point, the needle will tip enough in the Hydrant's favor from an economic perspective that they'll start to get a real advantage. If the economies are, as described here, with a 36.5 versus 40.5 for the Hydrants, that's a 4 EP difference is noticeable enough. That's 2 frigates that you can build from the Hydrant perspective that you're going to be able to have effect on, or ships that you can repair. And so it's really going to have an effect on the outcome of some of this sort of strategic level conflict. But if I'm the ISC, I think there's a lot of opportunity here to be able to cause pain and hurt and really screw up what the Hydrants are doing. At least in last turn, the ISC were very effective. At causing hardship for the Hydrants and costing them investments in EP, whether it was destroying ships and or eliminating things like bases and things that they were building. One of the things that I would point out is the directed attack or the directed damage attacks that occurred in their previous combats were a very effective use of the high attack values of the ISC versus sort of the numbers of ships with the Hydrants. While the Hydrants have a lot of vols, those vols don't bring a lot of punch to a fight, whereas the ISC in almost every encounter have significantly more attack factors. So if I'm the ISC, I want to engage in critical pivotal battles and direct damage the key command ships as much as I can. So whether that's dreadnoughts or YCCs or what have you. The YCCs are very expensive to build for the ISC, and obviously they're a command platform, so they're valuable. So as far as low-hanging fruit, whenever I'm in a fight with the Hydrants, if I'm the ISC, I'm targeting those YCCs and or any other command ship that is available before I, blanket my damage on the Vols, because the Vols, ironically, are very quick and easy to repair for the Hydrants. They're a 0.5 EP repair cost versus the ISC have a much higher repair cost for their ships. So more efficient repair and recovery for the Hydrants and a bigger economy, whereas slightly bigger cost for the ISC and, of course, lower economy. So if I'm the ISC, I got to make more significant, or I need to deliver significant and impactful consequences or pivotal battles with significant consequences for the ships that the Hydrants are building and so on. So very interesting to see. And also, one other last thing to think about is the Hydrants have they have supply 4. And based on what we're seeing here, it would seem as though the ISC have supply 3. Now, does that make a huge difference? No, but it does make enough of a difference that we need to think about supply, because the Hydrants have just a little bit more reach into ISC space than the ISC have back at the Hydrants. And so if you want to think about it from like a classic sort of maybe boxing or MMA, you're just outside the effective punching range of your opponent. And if they overextend themselves, you can catch them with a counter attack that will really screw them up. So very interesting to see how that's evolving. And yeah, very, very neat to see. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into the bottom corner of the map with the Carnarvon. So we saw that the Carnarvon have a 42.5 EP economy. They're doing extremely well economically. And what do we see here? So let's look at the top end of their map initially, which is this sort of combination of sending this Fox fleet up to be able to take and capture an Orion ship, which is interesting. Oh, okay. So this particular fleet isn't small. YCC, we've seen this before, but a YCC, two CAs with a prime team, 2 drone bombardment ships, a commando ship, another drone, so a drone bombardment cruisers, a drone bombardment destroyer, and then 3? Come on now. There we go. 3 frigates, 2 of which are crippled. And they've seemingly attacked and captured a YLR. Now, there's also another frigate in that hex, so there's a total of 4 frigates there, 2 of them crippled, and they've captured a YLR. So interesting. And again, there's a convoy with a Lyran WCA escort. I'm very curious as to what is going on here, because you can't daisy chain supply convoys. You got to build bases to drive that forward. So very interesting to see sort of how this is evolving. So we've got a convoy here in Tango 31 and a convoy here in X-Ray 30. And there is a tech that allows you to be able to do more than one supply mission. Maybe the Carnarvons have that, but at the moment I would expect that they can only provide extended supply with one convoy at a time, or one convoy mission, meaning you can't build with a convoy and do a supply mission at the same time. That would overburden the system. So you need a tug to be able to do that. But he's got a convoy here and a tug. And, so very interesting. Okay, so we know that this wormhole had previously moved. So let's pull up the Carnarvon home fleet. So it had previously moved, and the timeliness of that was important because it moved just before the Carnarvons were ready to build a base on that wormhole hex. So now it's right along the border. And I would expect that they're probably going to send something up there to build a base on it. And of course, you can see that Home Fleet is sitting on it with a YCC, 3 CAs, a couple drone bombardment destroyers, some other destroyers, and a handful, 5 frigates, it looks like. So not small fleet by any means, quite significant. And then what else we got? We got First Reserve. So First Reserve is doing some exploration here. Carnarvon Reserves. Here we go. First Reserve. So yeah, we've got a exploration frigate, or a freighter rather, with a frigate escort. So that's just kind of exploring their territory there, which is, nice to see. They got a convoy and a tug. Looks like they're building a base there. That'll be finished shortly. And what else we got? We got Wolfpack and Den Fleet. So Wolfpack is, oh my goodness, so many Wolfpacks. So Wolfpack's relatively small fleet, all things considered. It's a destroyer with 3 Ds and 3 frigates, 3 destroyers, and a drone bombardment ship. So interesting that it's in the neutral zone, though. They've gone into the neutral zone and sort of sat on that resource, which is interesting. I mean, why would you do that? It's just provocative. Why be provocative? I don't know. Good thing I'm so laissez-faire. Den Fleet, let's see. Carnarvon Den Fleet. That used to be the big bad fleet that they had, like all the big ships. You can see it's significantly depleted. We've got a YCC, a CA, drone bombardment ship, a frigate, 2 frigates and a destroyer. So much smaller than it used to be, but still more than enough to be able to sort of defend that location without a doubt. What else we got here? We've got a couple of... So there's 2 W-era DNs that are sitting on the homeworld for the Carnarvons, and a CL, a YFF, and a tug. Interesting. And one other Coyote band over there. Let's take a look. Carnarvon, Coyote bands, and a CA with a couple drone bombardment destroyer and 2 frigates. So why did I go through all of that for you right here, right now? We haven't really spent a lot of time sort of digging into what's going on with the Carnarvons lately, but we've seen them creeping up into Hydran space. So as it stands right now, there is an alliance between the Carnarvons and the Hydrans, hence sort of why there's not a hot war going on with that border between the Hydrans and the Carnarvon. We can see based on their distribution of ships that they're certainly gravitating the bulk of their fleet to the northern border and going up. So the question is, what's going on? The implication of the alliance would suggest that there's some kind of like infrastructure mission that's going on here to be able to build reach, to be able to get into Hydran space, to maybe support their war against the ISC. As a long-term plan, that really makes a lot of sense, because eventually the Hydrans are going to suffer some economic challenges, exhaustion and so on from the war. How that's going to materialize, who knows? I mean, that's still quite a ways off. But both the ISC and the Hydrans are going to suffer from that. Based on what we've seen on the border with the ISC and the Remans, that is, it looks as though the Remans are willing and able to support the ISC. And of course, the Remans are the biggest, baddest fleet in the game. So having the Carnarvons have reach and building that reach into Hydran space is going to be critical. The question is, with all the pre-positioning of these convoys, when are you going to start building stuff? It'll be interesting to see how that sort of evolves going forward. I'd be curious to see what this looks like in 5 turns by example, and what the results are, because it's kind of interesting. I am confused, not confused. I don't see the logical outcome here. Like, I mean, there's unless there's like a super secret backstabby mission in the background, which I don't hold like Carnarvons are capable of anything. But I mean, it seems like a lot of investment to do something for the Hydrans, and unless here's a out there kind of proposition. What if the Carnarvons are pre-positioning their supply network so that when the Hydrans lose the war, if they believe that would be the case, against the ISC, they can gobble up quickly and effectively a whole bunch of Hydran space, or former Hydran space at that point? I don't know. Maybe maybe that's what's going on. Or, like I say, if I'm thinking the Carnivons is being backstabby, maybe they're setting themselves up to be able to effectively decapitate the Hydrons. Who knows? But it's just a very interesting dynamic that's going on there, and I'm not 100% clear based on what I see on the map as to what is going on there. So we'll have to see. Anywho, let me move my head to the other side and start. Well, actually, no, I'll just slide over here, the electric slide. And let's talk about the Klingons. Okay, so a couple interesting things. The big thing is the battle for V. V for victory. So the battle for V. Let's take away the ships real quick, and you can see. So this is a developing planet that was conquered, and so conquered in now year 99, and so that's been taken, and ships went and go to take that. So that you can see a number of crippled ships here, consequently from what happened. Now let me share with you how that went down. So Daniel has been kind enough to share his scratchy notes as to what happened and where. So let me pull up my, just so I can see it in front of me here. I'm going to move this here. I just want to pull up the actual sheet so I can see it. Whoop, there we are. So I can see it in full effect and stereo sound. So you can see it there on the other side there. You can see it there on the map. There were 7 rounds of battle that occurred. And as a sort of a preface as to what fleets were involved in this battle, or what ships were involved in this battle, let me sort of explain what showed up. So there were So let me go through my battle orders first and paint you the picture of what happened. So as normal, I write my battle orders in sort of a very truncated military style based on my military background. And I titled this V for Victory. So I start off with intent. And the intent, to be able to communicate this to the GM, because he's going to go through the battle rounds and needs to sort of understand what I'm trying to accomplish here. So the intent is to capture V. And my mission, specifically, eliminate all the defenses and capture the planet, because just from a bare bones perspective, you got to eliminate all the other units and then take the planet. So my orders are offer an approach battle, which if you take a look at our combat tutorial, you'll see that when there's a base or a base-like unit involved, and there's a definition of what those could be, including, for example, a tug providing supply, you need to offer an approach battle. So I have to offer an approach battle, and then I will continue to the base. Battle orders will remain the same. The command ship of the ships that I included in this fleet, the command ship will be my D4. That's my heavy cruiser. It has a command factor of 8. And my battle line, as I describe it, is best for attack factors, meaning that I'm going to put the ships with the greatest amount of attack factors on the front line. So an example of this might be, in this case of a D4 having an 8 command rating, I would have a D4. I had a D3 in that fleet. I would put 7 F4s. So the 7 F4s plus the D3 is 8 ships. 8 ships being the command factor of the D4, and then, of course, the D4 on top of that. I indicated maximum Burr battle intensity rating. And then from a crippling perspective, or like how I'm going to take damage, I indicate the D3 will take crippling damage, F4s will take crippling damage, E2s, which are the frigates that are also involved in this fleet, will take crippling damage, and then E2s and F4s would be destroyed in sequence. Swap out crippled ships for non-crippled ships and continue until the planet is conquered. And then in the tail end of it, I also added retrograde all crippled units to Hotel 43 and Hotel 45, spreading out for maximum repair. Non-crippled units stay over V. So those were my instructions. So, well, the high-level summary here is that there were 7 rounds of battle fought, as you can see by the 7 boxes on the screen here. At the end of the day, I took out all the Paravian forces, which included a YBS, a Y-era base station, planetary ground base that is, a YCA, 2 YDDs, and 4 YFFs. So that's quite a number of ships. I suffered, as far as ships that I suffered, I had 3 F4s that were crippled and 1 D3 that was crippled. That's the total number of crippled ships in my So I destroyed 4 frigates, 2 destroyers, and a CA, plus the ground base and the YBS, and I only suffered, as far as damage, the D3 and 3 F4s, which is pretty good, all things considered. So let's go to the box-by-box comparison. In the top left, you will see that the initial burr is burr 6. Now, that's because the minimum burr being used by the Paravians, which are the folks I'm attacking, is burr 2. I went maximum burr 4. You add those together, that's burr 6. So I'm bringing a total of 28 attack factors in my first battle line, and the Paravians have a total of 21. There's the dice roll that was there, 5 and 2. That translates basically into 10 points of damage and 6 points of damage, respectively. So you can see here in the box, the Paravians took 10 points of damage. They took 1 SIDS worth of damage on their YBS, which is 4. They crippled one of their YDDs, which was 4 damage. And they crippled one of their YFFs, which is 3 damage, leaving over a -1 point. -1 point being that in the next round of battle, we'll take off 1 point of damage from whatever I inflict. The Klingons took 6, and so I crippled my D3, which left me with a plus point, meaning in the next round of battle, there will be 1 additional point of damage inflicted. So round 2, the Klingons are able to generate a total of 26 points of damage, and the Paravians 19. And that translates into, based on the rolls, a 7 and an 8 damage inflicted. Obviously, I got a really bad roll there, and the Paravians got the best. So I inflict 7 points of damage with the minus point from the previous round that translates into 6, which was 2 crippled YFFs. They're 2-3 ships. The Klingons took 8 points of damage plus the 1 from the plus point before, meaning that I had to cripple 3 F4s, and there were 3 minus points as a result. The Klingons in the round 3 were able to generate, again, 26 points of offensive firepower. The Paravians 17, with the 4-6 rolls that ended up being 8 and 6 damage respectively. You can see that, the Paravians took 1 YDD crippled, which was 4 damage, 1 YFF crippled, which was 3 damage, and 1 YFF was killed, which took 2 off, leaving a minus point. The Klingons crippled 2 E2s, which took care of the 6 points of damage that were generated from the Paravians. Round 4. Klingons, again, generating 26 points of damage. Notice 28, 26, 26, 26. I'm maintaining a consistent and consistent high level of damage on the target because I'm swapping out my crippled units for non-crippled units. Maximum firepower on the target as possible. That's the objective. So Klingons generating 26, the Paravians 14, translates into a 7-4 split. The Paravians take 7 points of damage, minus taking away the minus point, is 6 points. They're killing, they end up killing 3 YFS to be able to soak up that damage. The Klingons took 4 points of damage, and so I crippled an E2, which results in a plus point, which is 1 point of damage will be added next round. Round 5. Klingons, again, with 25 this time, 25 points of damage versus the Paravians 11. The rolls with a 4 and a 3 result in 8 and 3 damage respectively. The Paravians with 8 damage cripple their YCA and kill a YDD. The Klingons end up crippling a F. It's supposed to be an F4 even though he put in F5. Round 6, the second last round of battle. Still providing 24 points of damage on target. I end up doing 7, and the Paravians only generating 8, provide 3. So the Paravians take their 7 points of damage as killing their YCA, killing their YDD, and killing their ground base, which soaks up all that damage. The Klingons cripple an E2, which soaks up 3 points of damage. In the last and final round, still generating over 20 points of damage, I generate 23 as the Klingons, with a good roll giving me 9. The Paravians 4 with a so-so roll giving them 2. The Paravians take 9 damage, crippling and destroying the YBS. The Klingons take E2 crippling damage with a minus point, and that is all she wrote. So, what do you think? As we discuss that battle and the breakdown of it, A, was that useful for you? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? Is that you want to see more of that? Was it for the other players in the game? Was it useful to be able to see that breakdown and how those sort of how that battle broke down and how that worked? Was it good? Was it bad? You tell me. Interesting to note as we look at the ships that are still on station. Red Fleet was the fleet in question, and if we look at the Klingon Red Fleet, we can see that there is still a D4 and 4 F4s on station, keeping the civilian population under lock and key. So as you can see, ships were moved. We've got a couple of F4s and E2s there. We got a couple of F4s, a D3, and 2 E2s there. And then, of course, we've got these Battle Group Blood and Southwest Fleet. Let's do a quick Klingon. There we go. So Battle Group Blood, just as sort of like a recap here, there's crippled ships in this fleet. And what's happened was there were a number of crippled ships that were left over from the Romulan, the last big battle we had with the Romulans, which was only like 2 turns ago. Crazy. Or 3 turns ago. And so we've got D4 there and a couple of E2s. So you can see there's a number of crippled ships that are at that YDK to be able to be repaired. And same thing here with the ships in Southwest Fleet. Southwest Fleet is essentially a repair fleet. There's an E2 left over. And then, of course, you've got ships there. So between those two sort of fleets, there's these ships that are getting repaired. And because obviously we're at peace and there's other stuff that's going on, there's only so much money to spend, and you can only repair ships so quickly. So that's how that's all breaking down. That's how those ships are being distributed and what's going on in that respect. So you can see here, that was the big battle that occurred for the Klingons taking the planet of V. Now, the benefit, of course, is now that we've got V is a supply point and provides supply into the great unknown. And we've got these 2 exploration ships doing exploration in and around that area. We can see that there is a tug that's been moved over top of this base. Why a tug? The tug will allow the conversion of the Romulan base to being a Klingon base, which was the whole intent all along. And so we'll get that shortly. And then, of course, we've got still units here to be able to build out bases along the border, which was always the intention. What else we got going on? We got a whole bunch of stuff on top of the wormhole. So why on top of the wormhole? Build a base on it to defend against anybody coming through, because as we go back to the Federation, who's on the other side of that wormhole, we can see that they've got 7th Fleet here. So we've talked about 7th Fleet before, but long story short, it's enough to be able to stop people coming through, not enough to send anything through the other side. But as we saw, like it's at this point, that fleet is not an overt threat. However, due diligence, you put a base on it and, provide a little buffer. And as we saw with the ISC have wormhole tech that allows them to be able to travel through a wormhole without suffering crippling. So that kind of technology is getting sort of discovered as we go. So something to think about. The Klingons are a little bit behind, I would argue, on that particular tech front. And so figuring that stuff out is important from our perspective, from the Klingon perspective. So a lot of repairs that got to happen, exploration still occurring, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's what's going on there. Let's move my head to the other side. But before I do, let's go to the chat real quick. How are we doing? Okay. Woo! All right, George Duffy's in the house. Hello, George. Jim saying there's a secret plan to attack the insert random faraway empire, i.e. Klingons. There's a secret plan to attack. Yeah, okay. Bill saying, hey, George, and Gorns have a Riemann FF. Hardly used plasma made for plasma good turn modes. Come on down, new or used. We got them. You want them. Bill's used starships. Yes, so it would appear the Gorn are looking to put on the market a slightly dented plasma virgin Riemann ship. let's see what happens. It'll be exciting as so we move move that forward. Exciting and delighting. All right, let's get into the Romulan turn. As we can see here, big things with the Romulans. This is the. I feel like the Romulans have become this sort of like sleeping giant. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's lots of sleeping giants in this game, so to speak, but look at the Romulans' rate of expansion. It's sick. Like, they're just exploring so much so fast. All these fleets up here are basically exploration fleets. They're a cruiser with a prime team, and away they go. Boom, boom, boom. Look at all that. That's amazing. And then down here, same thing. They're exploring like crazy. The Romulans are doing a phenomenal job as a play, like execution-wise, of getting it done, exploring out and really sort of, pushing the envelope when it comes to this exploration, which I think is really, really good. So huge kudos to them for doing what they're doing and being able to do what they do. Other than that, we've saw that they're slowly building out their fleets. You can see that there is a Vulture here, Dreadnought, sitting on this base with a R&D and diplomatic team. Not sure exactly the intent there. What's in 4th Fleet, or 4th Legion, I should say. 3 WBs and a Kingbird. So there's a number of ships here. I wouldn't say there's anything to get overly worried about, but I mean, is it in response to Strike Fleet? I don't know. Let's see what's in the Gorn Strike Fleet. Gorn. Come on. There we are. Gorn Strike Fleet named fleets. Strike Fleet is a YCC. Okay, so there's a couple of stuff. I mean, certainly what the Romulans have on station is bigger, badder than what the Gorn have on station. But yeah, I mean, nothing too crazy, I guess. They've captured a Y convoy. I wonder if that's because there's EP on that convoy to be able to pay for the base, which was the initial intent. Very curious to see how that's sort of walking forward. I'll be interested to see how that goes. But basically, the big story from the Romulans is expansion. Look, like, let me zoom out a little bit. So just looking at this part of the map here, like the bottom section here, look at the relative size of the Klingon to the Romulans. Now, it's a little sort of harder to see because the black of the Klingons versus the red of the Romulans appear more like present. But I think it would be fair to say that if you look at the number of hexes that the Romulans have explored relative to the Klingons, certainly they've explored more, and they are probably, I'm going to say a good 25% bigger as far as volume, space explored, than the Klingons. So very interesting to see. Now, as we scroll up and we look at other factions by comparison, I'll just zoom out one more just for the big picture here. So look how big they are relative to how big the Carnivon are. Again, they're bigger. Look at how big they are relative to the Hydrons. I would say that they're bigger based on exploration, but not necessarily bigger at this point based on like defined borders. We'll see. They are certainly bigger than the ISC. The ISC are small by comparison. Bigger than the Remans, the Lyrans, and let me just move this over so it's a little easier to see. Certainly bigger than the Federation. I would say comparable in size to the Tholians, maybe even a little bit bigger, and certainly they are dwarfing the Gorn. So very interesting to see how that's sort of evolving there as far as like who's doing the best job exploring. Why is that important? Because at the end of the day, if you look at the averaging of like the numbers, even though there are some other factions that are bigger economies, that's essentially the luck of the draw. Like they find planets, they discover planets, they get more planets. The fact that the Romulans are exploring as much as they are really weighting the the chance in their favor to find more stuff, to be able to discover more resources. If they continue in this way, they are going to kick ass and take names when it comes to the economy. Watch them to grow substantially over a period of time. They will discover resources, and as they discover them, their economy will creep up. It'll be very interesting to see how that sort of evolves and what the difference or the delta is between other factions and them. It'll be interesting to see how that sort of how that goes. So let's go to the Gorn. Speaking of, let's talk about the Gorn. Let's creep that over ever so slightly. So you can see the Gorn here again, very much sort of the same. I don't want to say same old, but they are experiencing a lot of the same problems or challenges they were experiencing before. You've got, at this point, if you look at how much space they have sort of allocated for themselves, it's good. They can explore to the south, they can grow, it'll be good. But based on the size of their area of explored and the size of their economy, they're doing really well. As Bill said, he's got a slightly dinged up K1E ready for resale, and he's working around the rest of the area here to be able to sort of explore stuff. As we zoom in one more, we can see that he's building up the base network here. He's got good coverage. You can see he's starting to build bases along the border with the Tholians, which is good. I would say the biggest at this point, the two biggest things are building and reinforcing the border with the Tholians, as depending on your perspective, the Tholians are a legit threat, and we'll see how that goes. Incidentally, just as a role-playing factor, the Gorn have proposed a defense agreement between the Romulans and the Klingons and the Gorn to basically prevent another Romulan-Klingon war. Basically, the idea being that if the Romulans attack the Klingons, the Gorns would jump in. If the Klingons attack the Romulans, the Gorn would jump in. Or if the Romulans attack the Gorn, the Klingons would jump in, and vice versa. Like, it's a three-way mutual defense pact. That's the idea. That has not been agreed to as of this point, and so I think it'll be sort of interesting to see how this evolves going forward. But from a role-playing perspective, I think you'll see an announcement this turn, or going into this turn, that we'll talk about next stream, about what's happening with the sort of agreement between these factions. One of the things about the game which I find interesting is, as you get later on, you're going to have these pacts and these coalitions formed. So we've seen it with the Hydrons and the Carnivons, by example. We're seeing it develop between the ISC and the Remans. We've certainly seen it when it comes to the friendliness between the Tholians and the Feds. So you're going to get these factions playing nice with each other to sort of allow themselves the ability to focus on other areas of their empire. So as that ball moves forward and things develop, it'll be very interesting to see how different factions group together and how effective those cooperations are. So in this context, the Gorn are continuing to build up their base. They just dealt with the Juggernaut, so they're kind of recovering from that. That was a big thing that they had to deal with. So they got Home Fleet and, Home Fleet. As you can see, still a lot of crippled units there. And Vengeance Fleet, which I'm assuming is in their named fleets. Yeah. So Vengeance Fleet, you can see here, was the Dreadnought that they successfully recovered. And then, of course, they've got some other ships here. So they're going to be basically in fully recovered probably by the end of this turn, if not shortly after. And they'll be able to sort of continue to move forward. The exploration piece is the key to success. The Gorn need to accelerate their exploration, if only just to be able to match their neighbors. Because what's going to end up happening here shortly is, if the Romulans continue exploring north and then connect with the Tholians, they're going to box the Gorn in. And not that that's the worst thing in the world, but if they box them in, then where do they go? The Gorn will just kind of have to sort of be in their little pocket and play nice with their neighbors. I know that everyone's sort of racing to the middle, so how is that race into the middle going to manifest and affect everyone? We shall see. All right, let's scroll up and see the Tholians. Boom, the other big red on the map. So we saw that their economy, let's take away the ship for a sec. We saw that their economy went up. Why? They discovered this little resource right here. So they discovered this resource right here, and they're continuing to sort of push the exploration with their large exploration freighters. You can see that up here and down here. They discovered this wormhole, haven't transited it yet. It'll be interesting to see what happens when they do. You can see that there's a big push from the Tholians to go to the center. 1, 2, 3 of their big exploration freighters are pushing to the center. Their small exploration freighters, 1, 2, and 3, are on the west side of their territory, working towards the western border. We know that they took this Gorn planet. They are most likely going to be going after, well, hopefully incorporating from their perspective the ISC planet here shortly. And then they're going to be dealing with the Kzinti planet, which is currently unfriendly. If anyone can make those Kzintis go to war with the Tholians, it would be awesome. I think the Kzinti might actually have a chance because Tholian ships are so crap. But as long as we can somehow fund or funnel money to the Kzinti, I think that would be good, and good, if that makes sense. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Anyone want to send the Kzinti some money? I'll be happy to work with them, or work with whoever wants to do that. It'll be interesting. So the big thing from the Tholian side, as we've seen, they're not necessarily building their fleet out in a big way. What we have seen is the continuing push on exploration and the sort of incorporation of these planets into their economy peacefully. So very interesting. Scrolling up to the Federation, I'm really liking how the Federation player is growing here because, again, two things. You've got, just as a recap, they've got a base station that they've built over top of this wormhole, and they've got their fleet there. They still got the tug there. I'm assuming that at some point they're going to turn that into maybe a Y dock. I'm not sure. We can see that the fleets with cruisers and prime teams are continuing to push towards the center, doing a very effective job from my perspective. You can see that they are also doing the same thing here. Federation ships have arrived on station on that wormhole that showed up. What's particularly interesting, if we take away the ships for a second, there's no supply to this hex. So that ship, this YCA, is out of supply. So they need to explore these two hexes before they can sort of move on and get stuff done. Considering that the ship arrived, I'm assuming that because you saw it on the other side, and I'll show it to you in a sec, the YDD from the ISC went back through the wormhole and arrived on the other side without being crippled again. So again, the tech from the ISC side is looking good. Interesting threat for the Federation. Look how many wormholes they have. They've got 3 wormholes in their space, and we know where 2 of them go. ISC and the Klingons. Not to say that that's a bad thing. It's just that it opens them up for potentially some vulnerability. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of evolves. Let me maximize this again. And as we scroll up to the Lyrans, I'll move my head to the other side. Whoop. We can see that they are continuing to push towards the center here. This is this push of exploration, which is excellent. Keep doing that. One little thing to note, of course, they've got this base built here, so they've got lots of reach. I would expect they still have supply 3. And if they have supply 3, then we can see that they've, like from their homeworld here, 1, 2, 3, that's where this base is, and they're pushing into this area. If they can get one of these hexes explored, I would send a tug or something there. They've got a tug right there. So I would send the tug sort of into one of these hexes to start building a base or do something to extend their reach and really get to the center ASAP. It's basically a land grab at this point, and the further you can get your claw, as this is the Lyrans, into the center, the better your opportunity, the chances are that you're going to sort of hold on to some kind of reach into the middle, assuming that you want to do that. But we'll see. I mean, there is a certain degree of perception that there's value in the center. How much value there is or is not, who knows? We'll have to figure it out. All right. So let's see here. So not too much has changed when it comes to this wormhole here. We know that the Lyran Farstar's fleet is still the W fleet that we saw before, basically W ships with a couple of YDDs. We know that they have shared musings about wanting to invade the Carnarvon. It'll be interesting to see where they're at for that tech and where they want to go with that. They are looking to be able to take the... It looks as though they did attack it, because if we take away the ships, I don't know if you can see that. There is SIDS damage on... Hold on. Nope. There is... It looks like 1 SIDS damage on this YBS, which would indicate that either one of two things has happened. They've sent a wave of attack in, or they've done a prime team mission to cause a sabotage that base. So let's just take a quick look at White Stripe Fleet. Lyran White Stripe. So no crippled units there, which would indicate or suggest that there actually hasn't been a combat, but rather that they're using these prime team missions to soften the target up, which is a great idea. Great idea. Do prime team missions, soften them up, and then it makes it easier to be able to take the target when you want to get in there. So that's good. As you can see, we've got between cruisers who conquered this colony here and the YSR continue to explore along the neutral zone. You've got the really a real effort from the Lyrans to be able to push out their exploration as much as they can. Considering the wedge, literally the wedge of territory that they have, good on them for exploring. The only other component here that's going to be critical is the sort of the beefing up of their bases and infrastructure so that they can effectively sort of defend themselves against other factions. Big threat, the Remans. Don't know what the relationship between the Lyrans and the Remans is. The Lyrans have already indicated that they want to sort of go after the Carnarvon. What's that going to look like? Obviously, a war through a wormhole is challenging. So we'll have to see what that looks like. And then what is their relationship with the Federation? It looks as though it's very good based on the commercial convoys going back and forth. As you can see, this one right here by my head. But the commercial convoys going back and forth between the Lyrans and the Feds indicate or suggest a lot of alignment there as far as those players going on. So let me just take a quick zoom out here, and I'll move my head to the other side because it's just easier that way. So this is max zoom out that I can get, and I'll just move it ever so slightly over. Oh, sorry, move it over. There we go. So we can see based on what we have here. There we go. So based on what we've got here, we can see that there's some power blocks that are forming. You've got the top right-hand corner, the ISC and the Remans. You've got the western approaches, shall we say, between the Tholian, the Federation, and the Lyrans. I mean, they're not fully an alliance or anything, but there's something going on there because they're playing nice with each other. As we scroll down, you can see that the Greens are playing nice with each other, the Carnarvons and the Hydrants, because they literally have an alliance. And then in the south, we've got perhaps a little bit more turmoil in the sense of the Klingons, the Romulans, and the Gorn. There's discussions of something, but nothing's really materialized. So we'll have to see how that sort of pans out and how that works out in the long term. But if you look at it, like I say, there's like a wedge up around the Federation, Tholian, Feds, Lyrans. You've got a quarter up by the Remans and the ISC, another pseudo third or quarter, which is the Hydrans and the Carnarvon, and then you've got this other larger block, which is the Klingon, Romulan, and Gorn. Now, if I'm just kind of like, throwing stuff out there, considering the division in the map, it would make a lot of sense for the Roms, the Gorn, and the Klingon to play nice with each other, especially considering the Lyran, Federation, Tholian coalition. The Hydran Carnarvon alliance, it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Like we talked about, this exploration and expansion of stuff that's going on in their as the Carnarvons are exploring their space. it's a very sort of interesting development. It'll be, how is that going to pan out, and what's going to be the end effect? Are the Carnivons going to do something for the Hydrons? Are they going to backstab the Hydrons? What's going to happen there? Are the Remans going to drop the hammer on somebody? Is it the Hydrons, because there's a out of game context for that, or are they going to attack the Lyrans because there's a vulnerability there? Who knows? There's so much that could happen here in one way or another. So how are things going to move forward? There's a lot of different ways that the story can evolve. Conflict, will the conflict continue in the bottom southwest of the map? Will the Klingons, Romulans, and Gorn sort out their differences, or will they continue to tussle in some way, shape, or form? Will the Tholians and the Federation, along with their Lyran allies or coalition partners, will they coordinate some kind of action against the other factions? Will the Hydrons win their war against the ISC, or will the ISC team up with the Remans and just pound sand when it comes to the Hydrons? Will they turn them into glass effectively? So much to think about, so much to discuss. What are your thoughts? I'm going to jump in the chat one last time and see where we're at here. So, whoa. Okay, so Lord Lawless says, how binding, if at all, are treaties and agreements in the game? Not at all, to some degree, basically. So treaties in the game, fundamentally, that's all the role-playing aspect. That's the player-on-player action that occurs that brings out the fun in the game. There's no bindingness to any particular... There's no rule in the game that makes a treaty binding. However, there are some rules, and off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly, about how you break an agreement. But basically, effectively, you can break it when you want, the terms of which are agreed to between the players, and how you exercise those treaties between each other is between the players. There's no in-game mechanic that makes an alliance unbreakable or anything like that. It's completely up to whether I, as the Klingons, want to ally myself with the Carnivons or the Romulans or the Gorn or whomever. It's totally a player thing. However, depending on the player, there's sort of criteria and frameworks, or like tripwires, we'll say, built into the mechanics of how we're doing things. So it'll be really interesting to see how this all maps forward as the Juggernauts become more of a threatening force against certain players, and how this sort of plays into the evolving galactic politics of the game. It'll be very interesting to see. But that's really something that plays out in the role-playing aspects, which is something that I try and share with you, but really you see in our Discord channel. Let's see what else we got. Bill says, as much as in the real world, spring of one season, we could be allies. Fall the same year, we could be at war. Exactly. Bill says, I need more rescue tug. Christopher walking the great Gornish philosopher. Yes. Jim, Klingons have money to fund the Khazintis. George Duffy, tisk Klingon player, trash talking them Tholians again. Well, I'm just pointing things out. That's all I'm saying. I mean, to be fair, I am protecting my economic position. I want to make sure that the Tholians don't dominate economically. Specifically because I know the player who plays the Tholians, and I've seen what he does when he's got the economic advantage. So it scares the bejesus out of me, which is why I am encouraging everybody to be anti-Tholian. So, like, I have a very biased interest in trash-talking Tholians, generally speaking, because without knowing what they're going to do, I am finding the Tholians to be scary because I know what comes in later iterations of their M and GW tech, which is coming. So it scares the bejesus out of me. Reparations payment, Bill says. Yes, reparations against the Tholians. I think really we should talk about the Hydrons doing reparations against the Tholians after taking out that planet in their space. Just saying. Jim, well, taking Nippon from the Romulans tends to make things prickly, unprovoked attacks and all that stuff. To be fair, Nippon never belonged to the Romulans. It was always mine. Then he took it, and then I took it back. But like, it was Klingon from the moment that Romulan ships arrived on station, or like arrived on the planet. So it was always mine. Anywho, exciting and delighting. So much fun this particular week as far as how the turn is evolving, how the turns are evolving, and we're getting close. This was turn 59, so we're getting close to the big 6-0. 60 is a really interesting sort of milestone in the year. As a frame of reference, I have never played a game that went much beyond 120 as far as the turns. So the fact that we're at turn 60 is kind of like the midpoint for the game. Now, that being said, there have been sort of extenuating circumstances as to why a game might have ended at 120. So this game could go beyond 120, certainly, but very interesting to see how things go. I would say we're very much at the midpoint of the game, or like early middle of the game. Once we all sort of connect in the middle, if that happens, that I believe will be the true midpoint of the game. Once everybody connects and then real conflict potentially starts, that is when stuff is going to happen. So it'll be very interesting to see how that evolves as we get closer to uncovering who is in the center and the juggernauts potentially in the middle of the map. So what do you think? As a recap, did you like Star Trek New Worlds? Was that something you enjoyed? Was it something you liked us talking about? Is that something you want to do more of? Do you want to do a serial episodic review? That could be fun. What do you think about the sort of global dynamics, or galactic dynamics, I should say, about the conflicts that are happening? What do you think about the ISC and the Hydran War? Who do you think's winning? Do you think the ISC have the upper hand in the sense of like they got bigger, badder ships and things are going to change? They got the Remans backing them up? Or are the Hydrans overextending themselves? Or maybe the Hydrans are just starting to turn on the taps and the flood is coming. Watch out, ISC. Are the Lyrans gearing up for something special when it comes to that wormhole in the Carnivons? Speaking of the Carnivons, what are the Carnivons doing? What is all that convoy business going on there? How is that going to sort of map into the game? The Tholians, again, quiet in the corner. I was going to see what's going to going on with them. With the way things are looking, the Feds are potentially going to get to the center before everybody. The Gorn almost look like they're going to get cornered, and the Romulans are expanding and exploring faster than anybody on the map. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comments below. If you're catching us on the replay, we shall see how things will get going. George Duffy says, Tony should be looking at the Romulans more so over economic aggression. What? Tony should be looking at the Romulans more so over economic aggression. What do you mean, George? Do you mean like I should be trying to target them, like go after them or attack them? Or are you saying looking at the Romulans more so over economic aggression? So as I read that like the fifth time, I look at that and I say to myself, are you saying that I should look to the Romulans as an ally instead of trying to poke and prod and create problems for the Tholians? Because if that's the case, I agree. I agree that the Romulans are a natural, based on the way the map is, they are a natural ally for the Klingons at this point. It's just a matter of like, how is that going to map going forward? There's some role-playing aspects that are influencing on my end how the game is progressing. But from just a straight-up strategic gameplay, yeah, like I think that the Klingons should ally with the Romulans at this point. In fact, I think the Gorn Romulan Klingon corner should get together and do good things, because it's working for the Romulans, at least their exploration. And if there was an opportunity to sort of secure borders and create sort of stability there, I think that would benefit everybody. George, you don't see Klingon shenanigans, he says with a smiley face. He's a second place shenanigans giver. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Jim. I mean, to be fair, when we're talking about shenanigans, you are the king of the castle. We'll just have to see how that goes. Hydrons are apparently the kingpin of shenanigans. True. We refute this callous slur, of course, as you would, as I prepare to take a sip. George. Romulans will overflow into unexplored space of both Klingons and Gorns. I agree. Which is why I think a more concrete ally agreement between us is appropriate. Jim says the price of that alliance might be Nippon and moving east of the Klingon-Romulan border, for instance. I don't really see that, Jim. There's lots of other things that could come up well before that. Space, George Duffy says. Yeah, space instead of the SpaceX typo you got there. All right. Well, yes, I think that the game is looking good, looking sharp, looking exciting and dynamic. And I will be putting out a couple things in the work. I keep saying this and terrible. Okay, 3 things before we get going. 1, we are getting very close to getting to the point where we're going to put out the announcement for the new campaign. So I'm going to create a video around that, and I'll sort of like have it ready and locked. And then when we're ready to pull the trigger on it, boom, we'll put it out there. 2, Paul is our CGI artist, and he's been hard at work doing all sorts of stuff. He's been creating some new stuff, and I'll be creating a new trailer for the channel, sort of like phase 2. Or the mid game, we'll call it, or whatever we want. I'll come up with a snappier name. If you have any recommendations for me, you let me know. But either way, new trailer for the channel and sort of the stage of the campaign that we're at, using some of those new assets or like graphics that Paul has made. So be on the lookout for that. And then lastly, when it comes to sort of moving this ball forward and telling 2 friends, I want to thank everybody for, again, your continued support for the channel. All we ask is tell 2 friends. I'll let everybody know that this channel is here, that they can have fun and enjoy all things Star Trek and turn-based strategy and so on, and have fun doing it. Let me know in the comments if, as we move this content forward, if you would like to see things like reviews and feedback on Star Trek New Worlds. I really like that series. I'm going to be sort of very much following it as we go, and or any other sort of Star Trek oriented content. We're gonna have an interesting dynamic once that second campaign gets started. When it comes to, we'll have 2 concurrent campaigns essentially, and so which one's going to be featured on the channel, and or will both? It'll be very interesting to see. There might be a trailer for both different things. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like going forward, because we just haven't gotten there yet. And of course, when the new campaign gets started, it'll happen. There'll be a stretch of time before everyone starts sort of meeting up together, and there will be a lull before we can sort of get going when it comes to this kind of streaming, where we're giving you updates on how the campaign is going from an exciting and dynamic perspective. Would you prefer to see it as its own show? Would you like to see it, at least initially, as like a tack on to this one? What would you prefer? How would you like to see it? And we can sort of start creating that kind of content. So with that said, we are coming up on the 2-hour mark. I want to thank you very much for staying with us here. And if you're at the 2-hour mark and you haven't already hit that big subscribe button, then please consider doing so. I see that we, based on the number of concurrent viewers we've got as many likes. So thank you for that. If you're catching us on the replay, please consider joining us on the like and subscribe faction, and let us know that you like what we're doing, and that YouTube should sort of share it more with folks, because the more we can sort of get this word out there, the better. We're on our goal to get to 500 subscribers, that is, because 500 subscribers unlocks the community tab, and the community tab gives us greater options when it comes to communicating and polls and other kinds of content that we can sort of put out there, and ways that we can engage with you as this community. So with that said, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Star Trek New Worlds, and I will see you next week. Bye for now, everybody.